We continue now at the top of Daf Tzadi Tesam Aleph in Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 99a. On the previous summit, the Mishnah said that if a Kohen is not able to do the Avod in the Beis HaMikdash, then he does not get a share from the meat of the Karbanos. And the Gemara says, Menahani Mili, from where do we know this? And the Gemara answers, Amar Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish says, the Amar Krutz, because the Pasuk says, HaKohen HaMechate Oso Yochlena, the Kohen who's Mechate, the carbon, he's going to eat it. Mechate refers to the throwing of the blood, the doing of that Avoda, and therefore we learn from that pasuk, Kohen HaMechate Yochal, the Kohen who is Mechate, the one who throws the blood, he can eat from the carbon. She'eno Mechate Eino Ochel. If he doesn't throw the blood, he doesn't do the avoda, then he cannot eat from the carbon. The Gemara asks, Uchlalahu, is that a real rule? V'harei Mishmar Kula, what about the whole Mishmar? All of the Kohanim who are serving that week, De'ein Mechaten, they're not the ones that necessarily throw the blood of the particular carbon. V'ochlin, but the whole point is that they do eat from the karbanos. And the Gemara says, what we mean to say is that he's able, in theory, he's able to throw the blood, he's able to do the avoda. If he's able to do the avoda, then he can eat from the karbanos. That's how Reish Lakish explains the source from our Mishnah. But the Gemara continues and asks, Harei Katan, but what about a minor? He's not able to do the avoda in the Beis HaMikdash, he can't throw the blood, but he does eat. A minor that's a Kohen is able to eat from the karbanos. And so again, the Gemara revises Reish Lakish. Ela ma yochlena. Reish Lakish says, what does it mean yochlena? Yechalkena means he takes a share. In other words, a minor can eat from the karbanos, but he doesn't have a share of the karbanos. And so that's what we're really referring to. Roy lechitoy cholek. Again, if he's able to throw the blood, he's able to do the avoda, he gets a share in the karbanos. She'eno roy lechitoy eno cholek. But if he's not able to do the avoda, then he does not get a share in the karbanos. But the Gemara asks, Harei balmum, but what about a coin with a blemish? De'eno roy lechitoy v'cholek. He is not able to do the avoda in the Beis HaMikdash, but he does get a share in the meat of the carbon. That's what we said in the Mishnah. And the Gemara says to that, balmum rachmona ravi, by a balmum, and by a coin with a blemish, the Torah includes him already. It says, kol zochar b'kohanim, all male kohanim l'rabos balmum. That includes a balmum, that includes a coin with a blemish. The Gemara continues and asks, V'ema kol zachar l'rabos tvul yom. But why don't we say kol zachar includes a tvul yom? We said in the Mishnah tvul yom, which is a kohen who is tamei, he does not get a share in the karbanos, in the meat of the karbanos. Maybe really the pasuk should include a tvul yom and not include a balmum. The Gemara says, Mistabra balmum havalei l'rebuye. It makes more sense to include a balmum shekein ochel, because a balmum is able to eat. So we know a balmum is allowed to eat from the carbon, so he gets a share in the carbon. The Gemara says, Adrab, on the contrary, tvul yom havalei. The tvul yom is somebody that we should include. The la'ursa michsa chazi, because he's just waiting for the nighttime to be pure. He'll be totally fit at that time. But the Gemara says to that, hashta mia halo chazi. Right now he's not fit, and therefore we do not include a tvul yom, and instead we include the balmum. And again, this is how Reish Lakish learns the halacha in the Mishnah. And the Gemara continues with another answer to the Menahani Mili. From where do we know the halacha in the Mishnah? Rav Yosef Amar, Rav Yosef says, Michti, let us see, May yochlena yechalkena. We're saying, what is yochlena? What does it mean that he eats it? It means he takes a portion. Lichtov rachmana yechalkena. That's what the pasuk should have written, yechalkena. May yochlena. Why does the pasuk phrase it as yochlena? And that teaches the halacha in our Mishnah. Shma mina roy la'achila cholek. We see from here that if he's able to eat, then he gets a share in the carbon. She'eno roy la'achila eno cholek. But if he's not fit, if he's not able to eat, he doesn't get a share in the carbon. That would explain why a balmum gets a share in the carbon. But again, a tvul yom does not get a share in the carbon. And the Gemara continues by Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish asks the following question: Balmum v'hu tamei. What if the kohen is both a balmum and he is tamei? He has a blemish and he's impure. Ma'u sheyach l'kulo. In that case, what's the halacha? Does he get a portion? Kevan delo chazi v'rachmana rabbi. On the one hand, we could say, since he's not fit, but the Torah already includes a balmum, so lo shna mali tamei mali balmum. So we don't make a distinction. What's the difference that he's tamei or he has a blemish? As a balmum, he was already included from the pasuk to get a share of the carbon, and so therefore he gets a share even if he's a balmum and he's tamei. Or maybe we say roy la'achila cholek, that if he's fit to eat the carbon, he gets a share. She'enu roy la'achila eno cholek. If he's not able to eat, in this case he's tamei, he can't eat from the carbon, so then he doesn't get a share from the carbon. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabba says, Tashma, come here a proof from the following brisa: Kohen gadol makriv onein. A Kohen gadol can bring the offering as an onein when he's in the period of acute mourning. Ve'eno ochel, he cannot eat from the carbon. Ve'eno cholik lechol erev, he can't take a portion from the carbon to eat in the evening. And so what do we see from there? Shmami, no, we see from this, roi lachila, but we see that the person ultimately does have to be fit to be able to eat from the carbon in order to get a share of the carbon. That's what we see from this brisa. The Kohen Gadol is makrivonin. He's able to offer the carbon over here, but the fact that he's eino ochel, the fact that he's not able to eat, he doesn't take a share. And so Shema Mino, we see from that would be true over here as well. If he's a Baal Mum and he's Tameh, again, since he's not able to eat from the carbon, he would not get a share of the carbon. And the Gemara continues by Rav Oshi. Rav Oshi asks, Tameh bekarbonos tzibor mao sheyech l'kula. What if he's a Tameh by a communal carbon? Does he get a share? Mi amrinon hamechate amar achmona v'hainami mechate. What do we say? He has to be a mechate. It means he has to be able to bring the offering. By communal karbonos, we allow Tumah, so he's also mechate. He would get a share of the carbon. O dilma roy la'achila cholek, or maybe if he's fit to eat, he gets a share. Shein roy la'achila eino cholek. If he's not fit to eat, he doesn't get a share. Amar Ravina says, Tashma, come here a proof. Again, from the brisa above, Kohen Gadol makravonin ve'eno ochel ve'eno cholek lechol erev. The Kohen Gadol can bring the offering as an onein, but he doesn't eat and he doesn't take a share in the evening to eat in the evening. Shema Mina, we see from here, roy la'achila ba'inan Shema Mina. We see that he has to be fit to eat, and otherwise he does not get a share. And the Gemara says, indeed, we see that is the case. And Rashi explains, Ve'ino cholek lechol ba'erev. Again, when it comes to the Kohen Gadol, he's makrivonin, but he doesn't get a share to eat in the evening. Lechashay yifter ma'aninuso. Again, when that period of aninus ends, Alma, we see Afa gav de karinan hamechate osa. Even though he's called mechate osa because he's able to bring the offering makrivonin, but lo polig de ikar chaluka b'achilatoi. He doesn't take a share because taking the share is really dependent upon being able to eat from the carbon midafkar achmana b'loshan achila, from the fact that the Torah uses a language of eating. And Rashi continues, Mao sheyech l'kulo. The Gemara asked, by a Kohen whose tummy, does he get a share mikarbon sibur from a communal carbon? A communal carbon can be brought betuma. Does he get that share le'echol le'erev to eat in the evening? And Rashi explains, uve carbon sibur shekrivu tahorim kami boile. The question over here in the Gemara is actually about a communal carbon that was brought by Kohanim that were tahor, that were pure. Ipaginon minei lahai tameh. Do we give a share to this tameh Kohen? Hoel v'roi lechitoi, since it is fit. He is fit to offer a carbon, the carbon sibur docha tuma, because by a communal carbon he's fit because it pushes off tuma. O dilmar, maybe roy lachila bu'in, and he doesn't get a share because it has to be somebody who's fit to actually eat it, and the fact that he's tameh, he's not fit to eat it. Aval bahakrivu tamein, but Rashi notes, let's say the carbon, the communal carbon would actually be offered by kohanim that are tameh, lomi boilan. That actually is not the question of the Gemara. Sharei eno nechel, because that kind of carbon is not eaten at all. To kaimelan b'keitzat solin, we've established in Psachim and Keitzat Solin, Karbonos Sibur boin betuma aval ein nechol, and the Karbonos Sibur can be brought betuma, but they are not eaten. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Onein nogeya ve'eno makriv, and Onein can touch the carbon, but he cannot offer it. And the Gemara asks, Onein nogeya, can an Onein, is he really allowed to touch the carbon? Or a mini, but we have the following contradiction. This is from a Mishnah in Chagiga. Onein u'mechusar kippurim. And Onein, again, that's a Kohen who's in a period of acute mourning, and mechusar kippurim means he's tameh because he still lacks the atonement, the carbon. In those cases, tzrichin tvila lekodesh. They do need to immerse in order to touch what is kodesh. So how could it be that an Onein can touch the kodesh? And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Ami, Amar Rav Yochanan. Rav Ami says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Lokash, it's not difficult. Kan b'shetaval, kan b'shalotaval. In one case, we're talking where he immerses. In one case, where he does not immerse. Again, the Mishnah said in Chagiga that tzrich and tvila, and that's what we mean when the Onein immerses, then he's allowed to touch the kodesh. Rashi explains, Masisin Dekatani Onen Nogeya, when our Mishnah says that the Onen can touch Kodesh, Beshatava la'aninuso bo bayom, he immersed for the Aninos that day. And Rashi explains, Vahach Tvila lo boy hariv shemesh. This kind of Tvila, you don't need to wait for nightfall for purification. The Maila de Rabbanan bi'almahi. The whole thing is just a chumrah of the Rabbanan to do Tvila by Aninos, and that's what's happening in our Mishnah. Again, what's happening in our Mishnah is that there was Tvila. The Gemara continues and asks, but even if he does immerse, what difference does it make? Ha'hadra ale aninos, doesn't the aninos return to him? The Yama Rabba Baravhuna, because Rabba Baravhuna said, Onein shatava, when an Onein, when he immerses, aninuso choseres olav, the aninos, the period of acute mourning, actually returns. Rashi explains, Onein shataval, an Onein who immerses bo bayom on that day, the aninos botzer mechad yom alesi. The point is that you can't have aninos less than a day. Kedechsev v'acharisa ki yomar, but Moed Katan, we learned that out from the pasuk v'acharisa ki yomar, and so therefore the immersion actually shouldn't help that day, because the aninos fullness will come right back. And the Gemara continues and answers, lo kasha, it's not difficult. Ha da asich daite. In one case, he was asich daite, means he was not watching himself. And ha da lo asich daite, in the other case, he was lo asich daite, he was paying more attention. He didn't have a hesach hadas, he was not distracted. Rashi explains, hachi garsinan, this is the proper text. Elo lo kasha. The text should be rather it's not difficult. Ha da'asech daite. When we're saying rather it's not difficult, we're essentially giving a new answer over here. And what we mean to say is Ahi de chomer bakodesh. That Mishnah in Chagiga, de matzrich le tvila. When the Mishnah in Chagiga said that an one needs to immerse in order to touch kodesh, that was specifically when there was a hesach hadas. And what does that mean? Beda'asech daite mishmir askufo. He wasn't paying attention to watching over his body. Mipnei shu osir bekachim lavo bayom, because he's osir in kachim on that day, and so if he wasn't paying attention, he was asich daite, that's a situation where he needs tvila, but in our Mishnah, he was lo asich daite, he was paying attention, and so therefore if he was paying attention, that's why it's not a problem for him to touch the kodesh. But the Gemara says, what does that mean? Hesach hadas, if he wasn't paying attention, so then shlishi ushvi boy, so then he might actually be tamei meis, he should need a full 7-day purification process, shlishi and shvi, referring to the sprinkling and the sprinkling on the 3rd and 7th day, when a person is purifying from tumas meis. So how does that really help? It wouldn't be enough just to do a tvila, if that's what the Mishnah in Chagiga was talking about. D'yamar Rabbi Yustoi b'Rabbi Moson, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yustoi b'Rabbi Moson says that Rabbi Yochanan says hesach hadas. If there's actual hesach hadas, he's not paying attention, and therefore he might be tamei tzarech hazosh lishi ushvi. Then he already needs the sprinkling on the 3rd and 7th day. He needs the full purification from tumas meis. It wouldn't be enough just to immerse. And the Gemara continues and answers, lo kasha, is not difficult. When we say that he needs a full 7 days, that's if he wasn't paying attention and he might be tamei meis. But but in the other case we're talking, in the Mishnah in Chagiga, he was just had a hesach hadas from sheretz, he might be tamei sheretz, that's why he needs immersion. But still the Gemara said, tamei sheretz, tamei ma'al yehu, if he might be tamei sheretz, he's fully tamei, and harev shemesh boy, so he at least needs to wait for nightfall. Immersion also will not be enough in that situation. V'yoden further, afilu truma nami, this wouldn't only be true by kodesh, this would be true for truma also. He would need to immerse and wait for harev shemesh, because of the fact, again, that we're talking about a situation where he might actually have tumas sheretz. And Rashi explains, v'yoden further, l'truma nami li boy tvili, he's going to need the tvila for truma as well. Alama tanan hasam, why does it say in the Mishnah over there, tzrichin tvila la kodesh, avalo l'truma, it says that he needs to immerse for kodesh and not for truma. It seems to just be a chumrah that exists by kodesh. And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Bi Omer, the case is as follows. He says, Nishmarti midavar hamitameni, velo nishmarti midavar haposlani. I was careful for anything that would have made me tamei, but I was not careful for things that would have disqualified me. That's what's going on in the Mishnah in Chagiga, and that's why the immersion is required. Rashi explains, Hachi Garsinan, this is the proper text, Bi Omer nishmarti midavar hamitameni, velo midavar haposlani, midavar hamitameni tuma doraisa, the boy harav shemesh, from anything that was doraisa, that requires nightfall, that he was careful about. But haposlani lachilas kacham midrabanan, but something which might have disqualified me to eat kacham on a drabanan level, the low boy harav shemesh, there, you don't need harav shemesh, that was the case in the Mishnah, that's why you need immersion. V'chein lagabe truma, and the same is by truma. B'yomer lo nishmarti midavar haposlani b'truma, that's if he says that I wasn't careful about something that would disqualify me from truma. In other words, the point over there is that by truma, if he watches from something that would disqualify him, so you don't have to worry about truma, but he wasn't careful about something that disqualifies him from kachim, he has to worry about kachim. And Rashi says, V'shinuya dechikahu, really this is a forced answer. V'lo mesukim b'maskana hachi, this answer is not actually going to work in the conclusion of the Gemara. And we will note over here that the Shinuya Nuschos has the girsa of by truma ba'omer lo nishmarti midavar haposlani b'truma. The case is by truma where he really wasn't careful about something that might disqualify him from truma. And the Shinuya Nuschos explains, V'ratza lomar, what it means to say is, Afal pisha lo nishmar mi truma. Even if he wasn't guarding himself with regards to truma, afilu achi ein tzarech tvila letruma. Still, he does not need to immerse by truma. Kevan she'eno ela psul derabanan. Since it's only a psul derabanan, it's only a disqualification on a derabanan level. And in any case, the Gemara continues and asks, Umi ika netirusa lapalga, is there really such a thing as a person guarding himself halfway? And the Gemara says, in yes, v'atanya, as we learned in a brisa, odeyu hasal al rosho, if the basket is still on his head. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tes Amud Beis.